The Unfiltered by Jade.
Jade.
Welcome to The Unfiltered by Jade, where we educate, empower, and entertain. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, download, donate, and make everybody know about this.
Beats by RB Records.
Shopping assistance, your style, your budget. Our services include online and local shopping for individuals and businesses, personal shopping, purchasing of company and office supplies, importing and exporting small packages across Jamaica and worldwide, and helping you find unique gifts and items for all events and occasions. Contact us at 876-919-5195 or shoppingassistance2015@gmail.com. Shopping Assistance, your style, your budget.
Welcome back to The Unfiltered by Jade. Today we have with us here Nikieta Lambert, and she is a validation coach who validates and empowers adults who didn't get to enjoy their childhood. Hi, Nikieta.
Hello, Jay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, and how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am great. I'm doing great also, and I'm excited to have you here to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I love talking about this.
So, what we're going to talk about is the existence of narcissistic parents. This is something I believe is important to talk about. So many of us we have had this experience either with parents or caretakers. And I mean, you're the person here to come and give us some knowledge about it or to give us some feedback on, how we manage it and what exactly it is.
Yes, I have a lot of experience because I grew up with a narcissistic mother. I didn't find out that she was a narcissist, or I didn't, come to the realization until after she had passed away. But then it just all became so crystal clear, and I would, talk it through with my therapist, and they would validate a lot of the things that I would share. And, I just share my experience online, YouTube and my social media accounts, and have just had so many people step forward and say, oh my goodness, me too. That, there aren't a lot of people who just talk so blatantly about it, especially in regard to mothers.
Yes. Ooh. First of all, what constitutes the narcissistic parent?
Well, if I were going to sum it up really briefly, I would just say that they are unusually controlling and manipulative, and
Okay.
also extremely self-centered. And I think, so many parents can wrestle with wanting to control, or you have the helicopter parent or things like that. But this is to the extent that it results in emotional abuse. And so narcissism is a spectrum disorder. So everybody, you can look at the list and say, oh my goodness, I relate to that, or I see a bit of that in me or in them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that someone is a narcissist or has the disorder. But when a parent exhibits certain characteristics to the extent that it causes impairment to daily functioning, it messes up their day-to-day interactions, then that's when you start entering the domain of okay, I think this person may have narcissistic personality disorder.
What are some of the signs that we're to look for, or that we would see?
So there are many, but I'll just talk about some of the ones that definitely were most prevalent in my mom, and then the ones that I've had people reach out to me and talk about in my emails or my DMs that seem to be most common. So one is that they see you as their child as a source of validation. So they may cut you down or belittle you at home. But whenever you achieve something or you do something well, or you dress very attractively, then they'll brag about you everywhere. They're calling their friends, they're sending pictures, they're posting on social media, they're, stopping strangers to say, hey, this is my son, this is my daughter. And they like get this sense of inflated worth from your achievements and what you're doing, but they're like taking ownership of it. Something else is that they are extremely volatile. They're unstable and reactive, even though they don't really tolerate emotional responses from their own child. So what this will look like is if you offend them or, quote unquote, talk back to them or question them, they may get angry or even aggressive, and in extreme situations, even physically violent. And this can also be if maybe you disappoint them or you don't follow through on something that you said. But especially if you are opposing them in some way or saying that you don't agree with them or you don't want to go along with, maybe they want you to lie to someone, they will just blow up. They'll lose it, or they'll take you down an extreme guilt trip. But their emotions are just all over the place. They're unpredictable. And it's usually in a way that lashes out at someone else. Another thing to look out for and consider is the fact that they have very poor boundaries. And let me clarify, they may have great boundaries when it comes to protecting themselves and how they're not going to let you treat them or talk to them, but they don't respect anyone else's boundaries, especially the child. They view you as if they own you. And they just treat you like a piece of property. And so they feel like they can interrupt you whenever they want to, that they can go through your things, that they can ask you to do whatever they want you to do, and you don't really get a say-so. And if you try to have a say-so, they will manipulate you or gaslight you into thinking that, your reasons for not wanting to do whatever it is are not valid, and you're just being maybe sensitive or disrespectful. So yeah, those are a few, but there are many.
Ooh, okay. Can you get PTSD from a narcissistic parent?
Ooh, boy, can you? You certainly can get PTSD from a narcissistic parent because they are so volatile and can be so explosive. And they also find a lot of joy and pleasure in controlling your emotions and drawing certain things out of you, so they can make it a point to like embarrass their child in front of friends and family in ways that can be traumatizing, especially when you're in like your preteen or teenage years, when you care so much about how other people see you. It's traumatizing and can cause PTSD that sets you up with triggers that will last for years and years to come. But what is more common and more long lasting than the PTSD is complex PTSD or CPTSD. And exactly, yeah, CPTSD or complex PTSD is what someone develops or is more likely to develop if the trauma is ongoing. Okay. So, yeah. And so every parent, might lose their temper, might say something they wish they hadn't said. No one's perfect and parents are trying their best. But when you are with a narcissistic parent, it's not going to be just a one-off. This is going to be ongoing. It's continual. It's just who they are. And you're just living in this state. And so since the trauma is going on for an extended period of time, and when you're their child, you have no real way of escaping, it's more likely that you will develop complex PTSD. And if you have that, it's likely that you'll have symptoms such as difficulty controlling your emotions, maybe constant feelings of emptiness or hopelessness, experiencing dissociative symptoms. And that's just kind of like maybe disappearing into your own mind, detaching from what's going on around you. I know I just somewhat recently realized that I dissociate. You see so many people talking about it on social media, and they make it seem like this out of body experience, and you don't know what's going on around you, and you completely are detached from what's happening. But for me, and I think something that could be much more common with people and more subtle, is that when you are in a situation, like say maybe with a boss who is displeased with maybe you missing a deadline, or you didn't handle something the way they wanted you to handle it, or you are dealing with someone who's confrontational, or maybe they're not confrontational, it's just a conflict. And so you're triggered. The way you dissociate, or the way I dissociate, is I just kind of go into my head.
Okay.
And I have all of these thoughts that I'm thinking about, how am I going to get through this? And when is this going to be over? And I'm very much aware of where I am, and I know what's going on, but I'm not truly connected to what's happening. And what that results in is when later I go to tell my doctor about this interaction, or my husband, I'll say something like, well, I said this, and then they said that, and I don't even know what else they said. But the end of the story is, this is what happened, and then we left. Like, there's just the whole rest of the 15, 20-minute interaction, I don't remember because I went so deep in my head.
Escape, though. That's a way to escape what's happening.
Yes, and it's how you've learned to protect yourself. So I remember being very young, actually until my mom passed away. My mom would just do this thing where she would lecture and berate for literally 20 to 30 minutes. And just attack you and call you names and everything. And so what I would do is I would just go in my head and wait for her to be done. And I would wait for the pause, or wait for her to ask a question like, isn't that right? And I would just say, yes, ma'am. And then she would keep going. And then she would ask another question like, isn't that what I told you? And I would just say, yes, ma'am. And she would just keep going. But I would hide to protect myself from all the venom she was spewing.
I mean, okay. I mean, hearing this, sometimes I'm like, don't parents see what they're doing? But they probably don't. What are some of the steps that a child can take to deal with this kind of parenting?
Oh, man. So this one, that's actually really hard because of a couple things. One, the child is so at the mercy of the parent. They're not really in a place to make decisions for themselves. Like they can't move out.
Right.
And then honestly, a lot of people in their network, is that what I want to say? In their surroundings,
right.
They probably don't understand the extent of what is going on, especially because more often than not, narcissists know how to put on a really good face.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, to everyone around them. And they're good at making the victim look like the abuser or like the crazy one. And so, for instance, like with my mom, she'll like pick at you and pick at you and pick at you. And then, finally I might say like, what? Which might not seem like a big deal in some cultures, but in Black South Carolina, or even in my dad is Dominican, so Caribbean as well. Like you don't say what, and you don't sound annoyed with your elders. And so, or if I would say, stop, please, I don't like it. Like, oh, you want to take that tone with me? You're so disrespectful. Wait till I tell your grandma. And it's like, wow, you've been poking me forever, but I had this one little outburst and now you're going to take that and tell everyone how disrespectful I am. Oh, yeah. So if I go to them and try to tell them how unfair you are to me, they're just going to think that I'm being an ungrateful, typical child or teenager.
That needs to be disciplined.
Exactly. Like, I'm just not grateful for all my mother does for me. And so there are adults who will message me, because we talk a lot about going no contact, like just cutting off, don't talk to the narcissist anymore. But there are people who still are living with their parents at like 20, 30 years old for financial or whatever other reasons. And it's hard to get away. And narcissists, they're like master manipulators. They know how to keep you small in your own mind. And they know how to get you to doubt your own thinking. And so, especially when the child is still young, they don't even always know that their parent is the issue. Like, you might feel like, wow, mommy's really mean, or wow, I can never please daddy. Daddy's never happy with anything I do. But as a child, you internalize that and you see it as, well, I just need to learn how to clean the kitchen better. I just need to be more obedient. I should have known what they wanted me to do and just did it already. I should know. So that's just really hard.
So there's really absolutely no way for a child to deal with this unless they're an adult and decide, well, bye bye, you know.
Yeah, I don't
But
I
there's
don't
no
think
way.
so.
And the truth is, there are many times that kids don't want to also go and be telling strangers, that my mom is mean. My mom is mean, or my mom is doing this, because maybe they'll say, "Oh, what did you do? Did you give trouble for her to, to spank you?" So it comes back down to the kids being blamed for something that was done, when in truth and in fact they are being bullied or they're being treated in a particular way that leads them to feel the way that they're feeling.
Oh, yes. And God forbid that you share with someone that you think you can trust,
Listen to
and
me.
then they go back to the narcissistic parent. And now the narcissistic parent, when they get you alone,
Listen, that's not gonna be pretty.
no, not at all. Not at all. So it only takes one time of that happening for you to learn, I can't tell anyone. And I just need to find a way to get away.
That's why you have some kids that run away.
Yeah.
That's why you have some kids that want to commit suicide or try to commit suicide.
It is true. Definitely.
Because there's nobody to talk to. Who do I talk to? Who do I tell my mother on?
Exactly. And it can feel like, especially if you have a narcissistic mom, everyone in the world tells you no one's going to love you like your mother. Nothing compares to a mother's love. And so if you're in a situation where the person you think is supposed to love you the most is treating you this way,
listen to me.
Then what am I even doing here? Life is not worth it.
Okay. And when I hear people say that, oftentimes I say, no, that's not true. Don't generalize it. Not everybody have a good relationship with their mom, because we don't know the reasoning behind it sometimes. And yes, we are expectant, or we're expecting that the mom is supposed to love us more than anybody else. That's not always the case also. So I think people need to be mindful when it is that your mom loves you more than everybody. No, that's not true. You do not know that.
Right.
Everybody's circumstance is different. Mercy. How does one break the cycle of being a narcissistic parent?
So I would break it down to two things: education and transformation.
Okay.
So education, learning about what you've been through and what you've experienced, so you know what it is that you're up against. And then you can do the work to make sure that you don't repeat it. And so if you had narcissistic parent or narcissistic parents, it's not guaranteed, but it's very likely that you have inherited or taken on some narcissistic traits. Most people do, just in general, but you probably have a few more because that was your source material. That's what you learned from. That's how you learned to get attention. That's how you learned to deal with conflict. And so working on that and seeing like, ew, that's ugly. That's not healthy. I don't want to be that way. And one thing that I do want to say is that a lot of times people who had narcissistic parents, once they start learning more and more about what narcissistic personality disorder is, they start to worry about whether or not they are narcissists. I know I did. But I'm here to say that the answer is no. If you are actually worried about being a narcissist, you are not one, because a narcissist will not take enough ownership to say, hey, I'm a narcissist, I hurt people. And even if they did, they probably would not be worried about it. So, of course, you can never make huge sweeping generalizations. There are a few self-aware narcissists who are aware and they go to therapy and support groups and things like that, and they could be held accountable. But even they will say, oh, I know I'm definitely a narcissist. I have the unhealthy traits. I just work hard every day not to be this way. But then after the education and transformation, there's a lot of reflection, introspection, and accountability around working to be different. And you just have to be very intentional about it to make sure that you're not acting out when you get triggered. But then on the other end, which is something that I learned when I became a mom, I have a son who's 4 now, is that you can try so hard to not continue the cycle of emotional abuse that you go so far the other way.
Yeah.
And you become afraid of putting in place healthy boundaries and guidelines and methods of discipline and guiding. And I say discipline, not punishment. There is a difference.
Right, there's a difference, right?
Definitely. Discipline is like teaching and training and guiding. And so my husband definitely had to help me like realize you're not going to hurt him by telling him no, but I'm just so afraid, or I had been so afraid of shutting him down and making him feel like he can't talk to me and his emotions don't matter. But I was just creating a tiny terror. Luckily we caught it, early and were able to pull the other way, but I really had to look at myself and see that I was parenting out of fear.
Yes. And that's important to do. What are some of the effects on children mentally and physically that has been in situations of a narcissistic caregiver or parent?
Okay. So some of these things, there's, of course, the CPTSD that I talked about earlier.
Right.
Depression for sure, because it's so demoralizing. So there can be depression, anxiety, and along with the anxiety, hypervigilance. And what hypervigilance is, it's that state of where you're always on edge and you're always ready. And you just feel like something bad is going to happen. Even if everything is fine around you, you just feel like something bad's going to happen. I know it. What's going on? I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And again, that's from having to walk on eggshells and having to always be ready because you never knew which personality of the narcissist you were going to get. And then, of course, there's low self-esteem. So, and then in extreme situations, children can be physically abused. Unfortunately, not all narcissists are physically abusive, but it is definitely, it's possible.
How should an adult deal with a narcissistic parent post leaving a toxic environment?
Post leaving the toxic environment. So I would say to anyone who is able to go no contact, just cut them off.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, because they're good at playing the emotional game. They're good at dropping little breadcrumbs, never a whole meal, just a little crumb, enough love, enough affection, enough praise, enough decency for you to think, oh, maybe this next conversation is going to go well. Oh, maybe I can do the holiday with them. And they're just decent enough to pull you back in just long enough to regain your trust. And then they go through their whole song and dance and treating you like garbage and blaming you and embarrassing you. And it's just all the same routine. So it really is true of narcissists that if you give them an inch, they will take a whole mile.
Yes.
So if you can, and it can be hard because, they're your parent or caregiver, you want to think the best of them. You want things to be different. You want to hope, but they're not going to be different. And you're just going to keep getting yourself hurt. But going no contact is not always feasible for everyone. There may be, health reasons, or, there's just different reasons. Life happens. So, or you're just not emotionally ready. And so for people who can't go no contact, I suggest that they use the gray rock method. And what that is, you give them about as much reaction as a gray rock. They love to get a rise out of you. They love to hurt your feelings. They love to see you get upset and offended and all of those things. So you just be very, very boring to them. It's like, oh, you're going to let Johnny have chocolate after dinner? And you say, yep. Well, I'm not sure. Susie would never. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just very bland. Okay.
No
yeah,
emotion, no anything.
got it. Very short. And don't give them a lot of detail, because that's more ammo for them to work with. Don't share lots of personal information about your life. And just be very flat and very bland, and they'll get bored with you. They may get frustrated and get bigger and louder, but that's all. It's their ruse to try to get you to respond. So no matter what they do, you just stay flat. And then you can just, say, well, I think it's time for me to go. And that's another thing, learning how to put boundaries in place and maintain them. And so pretty much just establishing and communicating, I'm not going to let you talk to me about this. I don't want to have conversations with you about my husband. Or I'd rather not talk about how I'm parenting my child. Or no, I don't think it's appropriate to discuss my finances with you. And then if they start talking about those things, then you can say, I'm going to go now, and hang up the phone or pack up your things and leave. Because if you put the boundary in place and tell them what you don't want to do or don't want to say, and then you let them walk over it, you've given them more power.
Yes.
And they see like, oh, it doesn't matter what he or she says. I can do whatever I want. They don't mean it. And then hand in hand with forming boundaries and maintaining them is learning how to act assertively. And I did a whole webinar on this last year, but ACT is an acronym for affirm, confirm, and trust. And that's the process that I walk people through when learning how to reclaim their power and take charge of their life. So they're creating a life that they love and ensuring that life is an enjoyable experience for them, and they're sitting in the driver's seat and not just letting life happen to them.
Right.
And I'm really passionate about that, because I think I worked on that in therapy for like 2 or 3 years. It's so hard. I felt like I would go out into the world and get beat up, and then I would come back and my therapist would kind of look at the tape with me and say, okay, so where could you have been more assertive? Where could you have cut off this conversation? Where could you have stated what you wanted? And, eventually I haven't mastered it, but I definitely have a good grasp on it. I have the tools to be able to implement it. And so I'm really passionate about teaching other people how to do the same thing. So I think that, the no contact, gray rock, boundaries, and learning to act assertively.
Those are important, especially, well, for me, I normally would say like the no contact. But I just say not everybody can do that for some reason or the other. But no contact, I think, is important, because there's sometimes when, we want to work on it because, oh my God, it's my parent, it's,
Yeah.
and you feel like you're supposed to do that. But I just say they do things to draw you out, as we'll say. They do things, they draw you out, and, you start giving a response. Sometimes people are not able to deal with it physically, mentally well.
Right.
And it causes more harm than not when you keep going back and trying. Because there's really so much that you can do unless the person realizes that they have a problem and they need to get help from that problem. There's really nothing else that you can do about it. And
Exactly.
so I normally will tell people just for the mental state, a healthy mental state, it's best you probably just try and cut it off. Not everybody can also deal with the tactics, how you act in terms of, the approach you use, the tactics that you use, what you say. Not everybody is good with that also, especially because it's something that has to be practiced.
Definitely.
Right. So I mean, I agree with you. I also would add to it that even if there's no contact with the person, try as best as possible to get help and forgive that person for what they have done, how they have hurt you, and then you move on. Because sometimes if it is that we just move on without forgiving them, we tend to hold on to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, holding on to it doesn't help, um, because we're always remembering it. And every time we think about the person, we get angry and we get upset because of what they did to us. And we have to remember that anger, it affects us more than it affects whoever it is that we're angry at. So while we're moving on and cutting off, and it's okay, I want peace in my life, so I'm no longer going to be around you. I'm going to forgive you and leave you right there. Forgive you and leave you right there.
I like that. That should be a t-shirt. Forgive you and leave you right there.
I'm gonna, I forgive you and leave it right there and move along and try to enjoy my life and try to know, put in practice the things that I want, the positivity, and how not to deal with my child and how not to relearn certain things, because these are some of the things that we learned growing up with this person. So now we have to rearrange how we do things, restructure how we have learned stuff, relearn things, and become better persons.
Definitely. And can I make a note about what you said about forgiving?
Uh-huh.
And I think we are really saying the same thing, but I think in this space, particularly, or when it comes to processing what we've been through with different abusers, the word forgive can be very confusing and triggering for some people, especially people who
Mm.
have maybe been in overly religious spaces. Um, because it can be taught often that forgiving means
Forgetting and moving on.
forgetting, kind of like acceptance, and saying it's okay, and oh, reconciliation, that's the word I'm looking for, and that you should be able to, I heard it explained once, that if you forgive someone, you should be happy to see them in heaven.
Oh, really? I
um
mean, I mean, okay, sorry about that. I mean,
No, no, I
wow.
don't think. And it's actually because I had a post on Instagram talking about forgiving, and it was one of my followers commented and really got me thinking. And so now my post, it was, my caption was talking about forgiveness, and so she was kind of sharing with me, and we were having this back and forth. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I think a better phrase might be making peace, which is what I think you described when you said the forgive you and leave you right there and move on. And it's making the peace, like, okay, this happened to me. I am who I am, because of or in spite of it. I am healing. I am growing. This is my lot in life. I can't I can't change what happened to me, but I can heal and I can move forward and I can leave you right there and do better in the future. Um, and so I think you described perfectly what we need to do and what needs to happen. Just the word. And I just wanted to clarify for anyone listening, because I know sometimes wrestling with the word forgive it can paralyze you.
It can. It can. I get that totally. I get that fully. Ooh. Um, Nikita, you have shed a lot of light on this. There are some things that also you have brought to my forefront in terms of putting things in place for me, which I really appreciate. And I think that's why I really appreciate and I wanted to have this conversation with you so much. Because of the whole picture of this. Too many of us are going through this and don't know how to deal with it because it's parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're never taught to. basically no one is ever taught to, see that, my parents did me something wrong and
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. We're not generally taught to deal with that or to say that or to think that. So I think this is very, very important because you're speaking for many who feel like they don't have a voice to speak.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely what keeps me going.
It definitely is. Nikita, where is it that we can find you?
All right. Well, I always say my happy place
Your
is
happy
on
place.
Instagram. That's
Okay.
where, I put most of my content first. And so that's just my name, at Nikieta Lambert. You can find me. We have a fun community over there, people, sharing their stories and cheering each other on. You can find me on YouTube. I'm growing and developing my YouTube channel. That's longer content. So that's, again, my name, Nikieta Lambert. And then you can join my email list. You can go to nikieta.lambert.com and fill out the little form, like what is it, the stay in touch form, or you could get my lead magnet, which is ways to move forward when you feel stuck by anxiety. I put that together because that's something I'm very familiar with. So if you want to get that, it's completely free. Just enter your email address, and that, again, that's at nikieta.lambert.com.
NikitaLambert.com. Thank you so much, Nikita. I really do appreciate this. I appreciate the topic. I love the topic. And I love how passionate you are about it.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad it worked out that we were able to get together.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. Thank you so much. And I'm very sure our listeners enjoyed this topic because I did. I did. So thank you so much again. And we will definitely be back next week, Tuesday, on the Unfiltered by Jade. Thank you.
Bam bam bide, bam bam bide, badu bidi boo. Bam bam bide, bam bam bide.